I noticed the locks first. The key didn't turn the same way anymore. The door, once creaky and stiff with weather-swollen wood, opened too smoothly, like someone had WD-40'd over my memory. The smell was gone, too. No trace of the cinnamon candle I used to light when I stayed up too late studying, or the dusty hint of my high school books crammed under the bed. Everything felt scrubbed clean, like I had never lived there. I dropped my duffel by the front mat and stood there, waiting. For someone to yell, "She's home!" For my little sister to tackle-hug me the way she used to. For Mom to pull me into that too-tight squeeze and tell me how skinny I'd gotten. For Dad to awkwardly ask if I needed oil in my car again. But no one came. Instead, I heard the soft hum of a vacuum upstairs. It wasn't even plugged into the right socket. When I walked in, my mother looked at me like I was early to something she hadn't wanted to plan for. "Oh, you didn't say you were coming today," I texted, I said. Twice. She frowned, squinting at the phone on the white counter like it had betrayed her. "Well, you should have called." I glanced around. The house felt unfamiliar. Not wrong exactly. Just edited. The photos had been rearranged. My framed acceptance letter was missing. In its place was a canvas print of my stepsister holding a violin. Her hair curled perfectly over one shoulder, eyes tilted down like she was mid-performance. I stared at it longer than I meant to. "Where's my room?" Mom didn't answer right away. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and turned her face slightly toward the window, like she'd rather speak to the garden. She's using it now. Just until next year. Her lessons are on this side of the house. Better light. My throat closed so fast it felt like a choke. "So where am I supposed to sleep?" She hesitated, then offered what she must have thought was a smile. We set up the guest room. The pull-out's comfy. I even got fresh sheets. That night, I walked past my old bedroom. The door was closed, but the sliver of light underneath it flickered like candles. Or maybe it was fairy lights, the kind I had begged for once, but was told were a waste of electricity. I stood there a long time, not knocking, just remembering. It was the only room in the house I had ever felt was truly mine. The walls still had the faint imprint where I used to tape my favorite band posters. The floor creaked near the closet because I had dropped a box of books on it in 10th grade. My first heartbreak was cried out against that pillow. My dreams were written on sticky notes tucked under that desk, and now it smelled like someone else's perfume. The garage had a new shelf system. Neatly labeled boxes, college stuff, Samira, old papers, misc. My name was in Sharpie, all caps, like a warning label. I found my high school notebooks there, my baby album, a cracked snow globe I got from Dad the year he finally remembered to bring something home from a work trip. It was all packed away like old holiday decorations, like a phase I had grown out of. I sat on the cold concrete floor, legs folded, and held my own childhood in my hands. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had come home. I felt like a guest. A very polite, very temporary guest in a house I used to belong to. The guest room was freezing. Something about the vents didn't work right on that side of the house. I remembered complaining about it years ago when Grandma used to visit. She always brought a space heater and a wool blanket that smelled like mothballs and cloves. No one ever fixed it. She stopped visiting after a while. I understood that now in a way I hadn't before. The mattress was stiff, the kind meant for occasional use, not comfort. I curled up beneath the thin quilt and listened to the sound of laughter drifting through the hallway. Hers and my mother's. Soft. Familiar. Like I had been replaced in the script, and no one had thought to tell me. The next morning, I heard footsteps in the kitchen. Cups clinked. The electric kettle boiled. I walked in and saw her. Leila. She had her back to me, hair pulled in two, a glossy braid down her back, wearing one of my old sweatshirts. The university logo stretched across her smaller frame. It looked newer on her, like she deserved it more. "Oh," she said, turning like I had startled her. "Hey, you're up." "Yeah." I opened the cupboard, looking for my mug, the one with the chipped rim and faded stars. It wasn't there. "I think Mom boxed a bunch of the old stuff," she said, smiling. "She's been doing a lot of decluttering." Decluttering. That's what they called it. Not erasing, not rewriting, just simplifying. She poured herself tea, didn't offer me any, then sat down with her phone, laughing at something that buzzed in. I wondered if she had always been this comfortable here, or if she only started acting this way after I left. Later that day, I found my journal. It was in one of the boxes in the garage, between my textbooks and a shoebox of birthday cards. I flipped through the pages. My handwriting slanted more back then, looser, full of belief. The entries were so earnest it made my chest ache. I think Mom's proud of me. I think Leila likes me. I think this house still feels like mine. That version of me. She was still hoping. I stared at the words for a long time, then quietly placed the journal back in the box. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't demand my room back. I just started taking mental notes. That night, I walked past my old room again. The door was open this time. Leila had rearranged everything. The walls were strung with soft golden lights, her violin propped elegantly in the corner. There was a new rug, plush and cream, and a makeup mirror with bulbs that glowed like a backstage vanity. I stood there silently. She looked up from her phone, then smiled. "You can come in if you want." I stepped just over the threshold. The air smelled like vanilla and something floral. My old bookshelf was still there, only now it held her sheet music, her photo frames, a trophy from some regional performance I never knew she'd entered. She followed my gaze and laughed. "We've made it so much nicer, right? I mean, it used to feel like a closet in here." I didn't respond. She tilted her head. "You okay?" I wanted to ask. "Did you know this was mine? That I painted the trim with Dad when I was 14? That I cried into that carpet after my first rejection letter? That the dent in the closet is from the time I dropped my laptop and thought my life was over?" Instead, I just nodded. "Yeah, I'm okay," but I wasn't. Not really. Because the worst part wasn't that she had moved in. The worst part was how easily they had let her. In the middle of the night, I got up and walked barefoot through the house. I stopped by the thermostat. It still had the tape I had put on it years ago, marking the perfect setting, 72. My dad used to grumble about the bill. My mom would roll her eyes and say, "Let her have her little comforts. She won't be here forever." They were right. I wasn't. And, for the first time, I realized they were planning for that all along. I didn't expect them to change the table. But they had. The old oak one with the scratch down the middle. the one where I did my homework and ate frozen lasagna during late study nights, was gone. In its place sat something sleeker. A light. Ash gray finish, no marks, no history. The kind of table you find in homes staged for selling. We wanted something more modern, Mom said when she caught me staring. The old one was bulky. It had character, I said quietly. She didn't reply. Leila walked in then, a new centerpiece in her hands. She placed it in the middle of the table, a delicate glass bowl filled with polished stones and fake succulents. I wondered if she even knew we used to play finger football across the old wood, lining sugar packets up like goalposts. Now there was no room for games, only decor. That night, I stayed in the guest room and listened. They were talking, in the living room. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, not really, but the house was too familiar. The walls still knew me, even if the people inside didn't. I just think she's been distant, Mom said. She's tired from the drive, Leila replied. There was a pause. I hope she's not jealous, my mother said, in a lowered voice. Of what? Of being erased? Of walking into my own house and feeling like a stranger? Of watching someone else wear my memories like hand-me-downs? And still be praised for it? In the morning, I found the family calendar on the fridge. I used to fill that space with sticky notes and reminders. My recitals, my finals, birthday plans. Dad once drew a smiley face next to the week I got my scholarship. It stayed there for years, fading with time. Now it was all Leila's handwriting. Violin Showcase, June 3rd. Mom's Book Club. Pick up wine. Dentist, 2:30. Dad's work dinner, no leftovers. My name wasn't there, not even a welcome home. I took the marker from the holder and, in the smallest space I could find, wrote, Samira here. Until Sunday. No one said anything about it. Not that night. Not the next day. I found my photo albums in the hallway closet, buried under a stack of unused board games and old candles. Flipping through them felt like betrayal, but not of them, of myself. There were entire sections missing. I used to keep little mementos inside, dried flowers, ticket stubs, birthday cards. But the envelopes were empty now. Pages torn out, pockets limp with absence. I wanted to believe maybe it was just time, or age, or some small oversight. But I knew better. Someone had gone through them. Picked them clean. We had dinner that night. A full table, something that rarely happened even when I lived there full time. Roast chicken, salad, those little garlic rolls Mom only baked when company came over. I wasn't company, but it felt like I was. Leila talked the most about her upcoming recital, about her plans to apply for an arts conservatory, about how her violin coach said she had a real gift. She reminds me so much of you at that age, Mom said, beaming. That same drive. I looked up. I didn't play violin. Mom laughed. No, but you were intense, always pushing yourself. I didn't say anything, because I remembered that version of me. Young, tired, trying so hard to be seen. I had traded sleep for grades, comfort for scholarship applications. I had carried their hopes like bricks on my back, thinking if I just worked hard enough, they'd finally say I was enough. And now, here they were, praising someone else's music in my silence. After dinner, Leila asked if I could help her tune her violin. Just hold this while I adjust the peg. I did. She smiled. You've got a good ear. I bet you would have been great at this if you'd tried. I nodded. Maybe. But inside, I wasn't thinking about violins. I was thinking about how I used to write stories on the edge of my bed, how I filled journals with dreams they never read, how I studied until my eyes blurred, just to make them proud, and how now someone else lived in that room. Someone else had taken my space, my place, my name off the fridge, and they called it growing up. The thing about silence is that it starts as absence and then becomes armor. By the fourth morning, I stopped making coffee when I woke up. I'd wait for them to finish in the kitchen, listen for the last mug clink into the sink, and only then step in. No one noticed. Or maybe they did and preferred it that way. No small talk, no reminders of what used to be. Leila's recital was the big topic. Flyers on the counter, a dress hanging on the hall closet door, a pale blue satin thing that caught light like water. My mother called it stage-appropriate, modest, elegant. The way she used to speak about pageant girls when I was younger. Remembered asking for a new dress once, not for a performance, but for a debate competition. Mine didn't fit right. I still have the email they sent me back. Let's just wear what we already have. Don't make it about appearance. Make it about effort. I made it about effort, and I won. But no one came. I walked past my old room again. Daylight spilled through the cracks. It always faced the morning. Something I used to love. The way the sun would climb slowly across my desk while I studied or wrote or just stared out the window, thinking about what might come next. That morning, I paused. She'd left the door open. I stepped in. It smelled like lavender and something powdered. Her violin was resting neatly in its case. My books were gone from the shelf, replaced by hers. Classical composers, sheet music, a few Instagrammable self-help reads with titles like Becoming Her. I traced the edge of the desk, the one Dad had sanded down for me after I chipped the corner sophomore year. Still chipped, still mine. But she had taped a quote across it now, printed in cursive font. This is your season. Shine. I didn't touch anything. Just stood there. And for a second, maybe a full minute, I let myself pretend I was invisible. That night, I went looking for the box with my old stories. They used to be under my bed, drafts I printed, poems I scribbled in the margins of used notebooks. I once wrote an entire novella in a Walmart composition book, convinced it would change my life. I found it in the garage, water-stained, warped, left open like someone had flipped through and lost interest halfway. I took it out to the porch. The cold wood creaked beneath me as I sat cross-legged and held the book in my lap. I didn't cry. Instead, I started reading, word by word, sentence by sentence. I let the younger version of me, the one who believed in something, speak again. That same evening, Mom asked if I could drive Leila to her lesson. I didn't say no. I didn't say yes either. I have something to do, I said, as gently as I could. She looked confused. But you're just staying home, aren't you? I met her eyes. Not forever. She blinked. Her mouth opened a little like she wanted to reply, but she didn't. Just turned back toward the sink and muttered something about traffic. I spent the rest of the day printing. At the library downtown. Pages and pages of my old writing. Not because they were good, but because they were mine. I slipped them into clear binders, labeled them, dated them. And then, For the first time in 5 days, I returned to my old room. Leila was at practice. I knocked anyway, then stepped inside. The closet still had my old storage bin stacked at the top. She hadn't noticed. I pushed the desk chair aside and reached for the highest shelf, pulling down the bin labeled Misc. My handwriting. Inside were dried markers, a paper flower I made in 9th grade, and a broken keychain from our first family vacation. I tucked the binders in carefully, sealed it, put it back. Not to reclaim the room, not to demand it again, but to leave a piece of me, a silent reminder that I was here, that I mattered, that they may have forgotten. But I had not. It rained the next morning. Not the hard, dramatic kind. Just a soft, unhurried drizzle that blurred the edges of everything. The windows fogged, the garden wilted a little under the gray weight, and the air smelled like wet bark and silenced plans. I watched from the kitchen, hands wrapped around a cup of tea I made for myself. No one else was up. The house felt different when it was quiet. More honest. As if the walls could finally exhale. I had started to count the days, not aloud. Not even consciously at first, but in little ways. Refolding the same sweatshirt into my duffel, rinsing my travel mug, and setting it back on the counter, checking the train schedule out of habit. I still hadn't told them I was leaving early. That afternoon, Leila asked if I could take a picture of her in the recital dress. I held the phone. Watched her spin in the hallway, smile practiced and effortless. "Wait, make sure the back shows," she said, turning slightly. "Mom said it looks like something from Bridgerton." I took the photo, framed her just right. She came over to check, hovering close. "Ooh, can you send it to me? I'll post later." I handed the phone back. She didn't ask if I wanted one. Later that evening, we had dinner again. Mom made soup, the kind she used to pack in a thermos when I had finals. But this time, she asked Leila if it was too salty. She didn't ask me anything. I excused myself after a few bites, said I had a headache. They nodded, distracted, already talking about which heels Leila should wear to match the stage lighting. In the guest room, I lay on the pullout with the blanket folded up to my chin, staring at the ceiling. There were no stars up there. Not like my old room, where I'd once taped glow-in-the-dark constellations and named each one for a dream I hadn't told anyone about. In this room, the ceiling was plain. I whispered goodnight to no one. The next day, I returned my key. Not the one to the front door. They hadn't even asked for it back. This one was smaller, brass. It had unlocked my old diary box, the one I kept hidden behind books in my closet. I had already taken it with me. But the key, I left it on the windowsill of my old room, beneath the curtain edge, tucked into a quiet corner only I would know to check. Maybe one day she'll find it and wonder, or maybe no one ever will. Either way, I was done waiting to be seen. In the garage, I reorganized my boxes, labeled the ones I was taking with me, marked the rest, leave, not trash, not donate, just leave. They could do what they wanted. I didn't need it anymore. On the morning of the recital, the house buzzed with energy, hairspray, shoes clacking on tile, my mother's voice rising and falling in that excited pitch she reserved for guests and performances. I stood in the hallway, already dressed, not in anything dramatic, just jeans, my coat, backpack over one shoulder. Leila came out of my old room, glitter in her hair, violin case in hand. "You're not coming?" she asked, genuine confusion in her voice. I shook my head. "No. I've got a train to catch." She blinked. "Oh, I thought..." But she didn't finish, because she knew. Even if she didn't say it, even if none of them ever would. I didn't write a note. Not because I didn't have words. I had too many. But that was the thing about this kind of silence. It didn't demand explanation. It wasn't made of absence or anger. It was full of what had been said too many times and still never heard. I zipped my backpack slowly, careful not to wake the house. Though in truth, I didn't care if they woke. I just didn't want the noise to break the stillness I had finally found inside myself. I walked barefoot to the living room. My socks slid slightly against the new polished floor, the one Mom said finally modernized the space. I stepped around the coffee table, past the fresh throw pillows, past the family photos on the wall. They were all recent, all after I left. Smiling shots of Leila on stage. Candid moments of her with my parents at brunch, at concerts, in gardens I never walked through. There was one of them at the beach, the place we used to go every summer, back when Dad still took time off work and Mom still packed her lemon sandwiches. My spot in the picture had been replaced by a picnic basket. I stared at it for a long time, then turned away. The front door creaked the same way it always had. One last stubborn protest. I paused on the porch. The rain had dried up overnight, but the wood still smelled damp, earthy, like old memories. I stepped down carefully, the strap of my bag tight on my shoulder, and walked toward the street without looking back. I didn't need to. I already knew what it looked like, and more importantly, what it didn't. At the station, I sat by the window. The platform was mostly empty. A few commuters. A woman adjusting her scarf, holding a coffee that looked too hot for the weather. A man reading a paperback with a torn corner. It felt calm. The train arrived 5 minutes late. I didn't mind. I got on. Found a window seat, set my bag beside me, and finally, exhaled. As the train pulled away, the town rolled past like a movie I'd already watched. Telephone wires, cracked sidewalks, the corner store with the ice machine out front. I wondered if I'd ever see it again. If I'd want to. Probably not. Not because I hated it, but because I had carried so much of it inside me for so long, I didn't need to return to prove anything. That place had been home once. Then it became something else. And now, it was just a station I left from. My phone buzzed. A message from Mom. "Don't forget to wish Leila good luck. No safe travels. No come back soon. No I'm sorry." I stared at it, typed a reply, then deleted it, turned my phone off, and watched the fields blur by. I moved into a studio apartment with a broken heater and windows that let in too much noise. The paint on the walls peeled slightly at the corners. The bathroom mirror had a small crack in the bottom edge, like it had flinched at its own reflection. There was no dining table, just a chipped counter that doubled as a desk when I pulled one of the 2 chairs over. But it was mine. Every inch of it was mine. No one had touched it before me. No one had folded my blankets and replaced them. No one had rearranged my shelves or packed away my memories in boxes marked MISC. There was nothing here but quiet, and, for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like silence. It felt like peace. I spent the first few days unpacking slowly, one bag at a time. I lined the edge of the windowsill with old photos, the ones they never put on the fridge. Me holding a trophy from the spelling bee in 5th grade. A blurry shot of me at prom, laughing just out of frame. A candid from a camping trip, hair messy, face smudged with marshmallow. I taped them up like stars. Like proof that I had been someone, once. That I still was. I started writing again. Not to publish. Not even to show anyone. Just because it reminded me that I still had a voice. That not every story had to be swallowed whole. The first thing I wrote was a letter I never intended to send to them, not angry, not even bitter. Just honest. I know I made it easy for you to forget me. I know I kept quiet because I thought it would make me easier to love. I thought that if I gave you space, you'd make space for me in return. I was wrong, but I'm not angry anymore. You taught me something important. That home isn't a room, or a bed, or a title in a family group chat. It's the place where you are allowed to exist, fully, quietly, without needing to earn your right to be there. And that place? I'm building it now. Without you, I folded it, slipped it into the back of my notebook, then turned the page. One night, I dreamed of my old room, not as it was when I left, but as it used to be. Walls covered in posters, desk cluttered with notebooks and snack wrappers, fairy lights taped unevenly along the windows, music playing low from a cracked speaker, my younger self sitting cross-legged on the bed, mouthing the words to a poem only she would ever read. She didn't look at me, but I looked at her, and I whispered something only she could hear. You mattered. Even when they didn't see it, the next morning, I woke to light. A soft sunbeam cutting through the grimy blinds, spilling warmth across my pillow. I stretched slowly, letting it settle on my skin. I didn't reach for my phone. Didn't check for messages. I didn't need to know if they had texted, because for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for someone to remember me. I had already remembered myself. The message came on a Tuesday. Mid-morning. I was in the middle of folding laundry, towels still warm from the dryer, the window cracked just enough to let the city noise feel like company. My phone buzzed once and then again. It was from Mom. We're doing a little dinner for Leila's birthday this weekend. Just family. You should come. Just family. The words settled like dust in my chest. I reread it. Once, twice. There was no apology. No, we miss you. No acknowledgement of the room, or the way I left, or the fact that they hadn't checked in since I stepped off that train over a month ago. Just a casual tap on the glass, as if I were a photo hanging slightly crooked, and they wanted to straighten me, then move on. I stared at the screen for a while. The microwave beeped behind me. I didn't move. Because what do you do with a door that only opens once you've stopped knocking? What do you say to people who remembered you only after they rearranged your absence? I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Instead, I walked across the room, picked up the second chair by the counter, the one no one had sat in yet, and moved it to the closet. I didn't need it anymore. Not for visitors. Not to prove I was ready for someone to finally sit down and stay. I sat alone at the counter, a plate of reheated rice, a spoon, a cup of tea, slightly too cold, and I lit the candle I bought for myself, cinnamon, like the one from my old room. The flame flickered. Steady. Mine. That night, I took the last box out from under the bed, the one labeled Keep. I opened it slowly. Inside was my old journal, the binder of printed stories, and a few photographs I'd kept even when it hurt to look at them. One of me and Dad at a science fair. One of Mom braiding my hair when I was 8. One of Leila, younger, grinning up at me like I was magic. I didn't tear them up. I didn't throw them out. I just placed them gently into the drawer by my desk, not to forget, but to file away. Like a chapter you don't reread, but also don't deny. The next morning I woke up before sunrise. No alarm, no reason, just light stretching softly across the floor like it was reaching for something. I stood barefoot by the window. Outside, the world was moving, slowly, gently, without rush. And so was I.